So, I've got a bag of random graphics cards. These graphics cards are all untested and I got them either very cheaply or for free in ewaste. Let's pull one out and see if it works. Okay, it is time to dunk. Right, I'm going to look away and I'm going to delve deep, see what I can find, see what we get. What's that one? Oh dear. And oh dear indeed. The graphics card I managed to pull from the bag is an ATI Radeon X300 SE from 2004. The X300 SE uses the RV370 graphics core. It sports 4 pixel shaders, 2 vertex shaders, 4 TMUs and 4 ROPs. Mine comes with 128 megabytes of DDR VRAM clocked in at 200 MHz, while the core is running at 325. Other features of this card include a basic DirectX 9 support. In terms of connectivity, the card has a DVI, an S-video and a VGA port. The card doesn't draw more than 30 watts under load, hence the passive cooling, and is somewhat crippled by its 64-bit bus width. I won't be overclocking today, as MSI Afterburner doesn't really like this graphics card, especially not running Windows 10. This graphics card was a pain in the ass to get going, to say the least. Upon releasing its cooler, I found 20-year-old thermal paste, which had turned into a glue, completely stuck to the graphics chip. This thermal paste was also completely stuck to the top of the cooler, and it was very difficult to get rid of, requiring multiple goes with cotton bud and isopropyl alcohol, eventually leading to me just scraping off the cooler on the edge of my desk. Probably not the best thing to do with your cooler, but when the thermal paste won't come off any other way, it's the only choice I had. The issues didn't stop there though, as once I actually put it into my PC, it didn't work. So I was thinking, oh, I've just pulled out a dead card. And no, my test rig had broken. But strangely, the next day when I plugged in a known working graphics card into it, it fired straight up. So, installing this graphics card into my old test PC did fix the problem, but I was limited to using the old test PC. Scrambled together a fresh Windows 10 install and bodged up some drivers, having to install them manually, as the latest ones are for Windows Vista and Catalyst doesn't like to install even if the drivers are supported. But eventually, I did have this card up and running on the Windows 10 desktop. So let's see just how well this 20-year-old low-end graphics card can perform. I paired this graphics card with my old test system, running an i7-3770 and 8GB of RAM. No bottlenecks will be had here, even though it is the older system. In general usage, the card performed great, with only a few little slowdowns with a couple of modern Windows 10 animations. YouTube also worked well on this graphics card, and after some trial and error I found that 720p offered the best quality and performance with this system. Some frames were still dropped, but if you wanted to get smoother video you could go down to 480p, or if you just wanted the visuals, 1080 did also work, just it was pretty slow, especially when running in full screen. The first game I decided to benchmark on this system was Colony Survival. This game performed horribly at 1024x768 with all the lowest settings selected. It got an average between 12 and 14 frames per second, with dips below that. It would be possible to lower the resolution even further by playing in a small window, but at that point, is the game even worth playing? This game's not playable on the X300. Farming Simulator 2011 was a weird one. We ran it in 848x480 at all the lowest settings possible, and achieved anywhere from 10 to 30 FPS. You'd get 30 FPS when you were looking away from things, and if you were looking towards the farmyard where all the tractors were, and towards the sheds where the textures were, or to where any 3D object was, the FPS would tank to about 11 or 10. The game had a lot of issues with artifacting, as I'm pointing out. Game did drop as low as 8 or 9 frames per second, and as a result of this, I wouldn't play Farming Simulator 2011 on this graphics card. Jalopy was ran up next. We were using 640x480 with all the lowest settings selected. The card managed to push out an average of 10 frames per second, with highs up to 14 and lows down to 7. Overall, it wasn't very playable on this card, and had quite a large amount of input lag. The game also looked horrible at these settings. I would not recommend playing Jalopy on an X300 SE. The long drive was up next. It was run in 480p with all the lowest settings selected, and in the starting garage, it managed to average around 13 frames per second, with dips down to 8. However, this did improve somewhat when you got out onto the road, and it began to average to 14 frames per second. Overall, this game is still not very playable on the X300, but it did perform faster than I thought it would. Simple Planes was up next for a bit of a flight simulator to test. We ran it in 800 by 600 with the lowest settings, and it got us an average of around 28 frames per second. It didn't really drop below 24, and it did occasionally break the 30 frame per second mark. Overall, it was somewhat playable, but the game looked kinda crap. For our last game we have Minecraft, albeit an older version, 1.5.1 to be specific, which is from 2013. It was run in 1080p with ultra low settings and the render distance set as small as possible. We achieved an average of 21 frames per second, with dips into the mid-teens and highs up towards 25 frames a second. This would be playable in a pinch, and if you were to use lower resolutions, you could even run newer versions of Minecraft, such as 1.7. So in conclusion, the Radeon X300 SE surprised me a bit, attempting to run games over 10 to 15 years newer than it is. Now I can't exactly recommend purchasing one of these to use on the daily, but as a retro gaming card it would perform admirably. You can go online and find these things for 10 to 15 Australian dollars, but I would instead try and find one in an old computer that's being thrown away, rather than actually buying one, especially for that price. To keep this video somewhat short, I only tested more modern games on it. If you'd like to see how older games perform, let me know in the comment section and I might make a follow-up video on this, potentially running an older operating system and overclocking the card. This has been Primitive PCs. Good night.